I, 32, have been married to my husband, Mark, 34, for 5 years. For 4 of those years, I thought we were happy. The last year, however, felt like watching a flower wilt in slow motion. It started subtly, with him staying late at work more often, his phone always face down on the nightstand, a new and unfamiliar distance in his eyes when he looked at me. It was the kind of slow decay you almost convince yourself is not happening. You tell yourself it is just stress. You tell yourself it is just a phase. You do not want to see the truth because seeing it means everything has to change. The real breaking point, the moment the wilting flower finally crumbled to dust, was not discovering the affair itself. It was what he stole from me to fuel it. My mother passed away a year and a half ago. It was sudden, and it shattered my world. She was my best friend, my anchor. The grief was a physical weight I carried every day. Mark was supportive for about a week, and then his patience seemed to run out. He grew tired of my sadness. He wanted the old me back, the one who was not shadowed by loss. I could not just flip a switch, and my inability to do so created a chasm between us. My mother left me very little of monetary value, but she left me one thing that was priceless. It was a sapphire necklace. It was not just any necklace. It was a single, deep blue sapphire, cut in a teardrop shape, hanging from a delicate, handcrafted silver chain. My father had it made for her on their 10th wedding anniversary. The jeweler who made it was an old family friend who had since retired, so it was truly one of a kind. She wore it every single day. It was as much a part of her as her smile or the sound of her laugh. After she died, it became my most treasured possession. It was the only tangible piece of her I had left. I kept it in a velvet-lined jewelry box on my dresser, a box Mark had given me for our first anniversary. I rarely wore it. I was too afraid of losing it. Most days, I would just open the box and look at it, letting my fingers trace the cool surface of the stone, and for a moment, I could feel her close to me again. The discovery came on a Tuesday night. It was late, almost 2 in the morning. Mark was supposedly on a business trip in another city. I could not sleep, a common occurrence since my mom passed. I was scrolling aimlessly through social media, my thumb flicking past photos of happy families and vacation sunsets. A post from one of Mark's colleagues popped up. It was a gallery of pictures from a company awards gala that had happened the previous weekend. Mark had told me he had to go alone because it was a team-building, employees-only event. I had not questioned it. I was too tired to argue, too tired to care about another work function I would have to make small talk at. The first few photos were generic. People in suits and dresses holding glasses of champagne. Then I saw him. Mark was standing with his arm wrapped tightly around a woman's waist. She was laughing, her head tilted back, looking up at him with an adoration that made my stomach clench. I did not know her name, but I recognized her from other work photos. Her name was Amelia. And then I saw it. Glimmering against her skin, nestled right in the hollow of her throat, was my mother's sapphire necklace. For a long moment, I could not breathe. My mind refused to process what my eyes were seeing. It had to be a mistake. It was a similar necklace, a coincidence. But it was not. I zoomed in, my fingers trembling so hard I could barely control the screen. There was no doubt. The unique silver chain, the specific cut of the sapphire, the way it caught the light. It was hers. It was mine. My heart started pounding, a frantic, painful rhythm against my ribs. I threw my phone onto the bed and scrambled out of the room, my bare feet cold against the hardwood floor. I ran to my dresser and ripped open the jewelry box. The velvet indent where the necklace always rested was empty. It was just gone. There was no sign of a break-in, no shattered glass, no force locks. The only other person with a key to our house was Mark. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. He had not just cheated on me. He had taken the last piece of my mother I had left on this earth and given it to his mistress. The betrayal was so profound, so monstrous, it felt like it was suffocating me. In that moment, the grief for my marriage died, and something else, something cold and hard and resolute, began to grow in its place. I sat on the edge of our bed for what felt like hours, the empty jewelry box in my lap. The initial shock gave way to a wave of nausea, then a cold, quiet rage that settled deep in my bones. I thought back over the last few months, every late night, every vague answer, every time he flinched away from my touch. It all clicked into place, forming a picture so ugly and clear I could not believe I had not seen it sooner. He had been lying to me for months, maybe longer. He had been building a separate life, a life with her. And he had used a piece of my soul to decorate it. I picked up my phone again and looked at the picture. I saved it. I took a screenshot. I looked at her, Amelia, smiling so brightly, wearing my mother's memory like a trophy. Did she know where it came from? Did she ask? Or did she not care, happy to accept a beautiful gift from a man who was lying to his wife back home? It did not matter. She was wearing it. He had given it to her. They were both complicit in this desecration. My first instinct was to call him, to scream at him until my voice was raw. But I stopped myself. What would that accomplish? He would deny it. He would gaslight me, tell me I was crazy, that I had lost the necklace myself. He would turn it around and make it my fault, my grief making me paranoid. I knew his playbook. I had seen him use it for smaller things over the years. No, a screaming match would give him the upper hand. It would make me look hysterical and emotional, and he would use that to control the narrative. I needed a plan. I needed to be calm, calculated, and methodical. I would not let him get away with this. This was not a simple heartbreak I could cry my way through. This was a violation. It was theft. And I would treat it as such. I closed the empty jewelry box and put it back on the dresser. I went back to bed, but not to sleep. I lay there in the dark. The image of that necklace on her skin burned into my mind, and I started to think. For the first time in a year, the fog of grief began to lift, replaced by the sharp clarity of purpose. He had started a war, and I was going to finish it. The next morning, I began my quiet investigation. Mark was due back from his business trip that evening. I had a limited window of time to gather what I needed. I started with our finances. I logged into our joint bank account, my hands steady now. I scrolled through months of transactions, looking for anything out of the ordinary. It did not take long to find them. Dozens of charges at expensive restaurants I had never been to. A recurring charge for a boutique hotel in a town just an hour away. He had been sloppy, labeling them all under broad categories like client dinner or travel expense, but there were too many of them, too frequent, too expensive. There was one charge from a high-end lingerie store. I felt a fresh pang of sickness, but I pushed it down. This was not about feelings anymore. This was about facts. I took screenshots of everything, saved them to a secure folder, and emailed them to a new, secret email address I created just for this purpose. Next, I turned my attention to the necklace itself. I needed more than just a photo of her wearing it. I needed undeniable proof of ownership and value. I remembered my mother mentioning she had gotten it appraised for insurance purposes years ago. I spent the next hour tearing through the old file cabinet in the spare room, my heart pounding with a mix of dread and hope. Finally, tucked away in a folder labeled Important Documents, I found it. It was the official appraisal from a certified gemologist. It described the necklace in painstaking detail, the weight and clarity of the sapphire, the unique filigree on the silver chain, the maker's mark hidden on the clasp. It also listed its estimated value, which was significantly more than I had realized. It was enough to qualify as felony theft. The document was dated, signed, and stamped. It was irrefutable. I scanned it and sent it to my secret email address, along with the photo of Amelia. I felt a grim satisfaction. This was my weapon. I needed to talk to someone. I could not hold this inside any longer. I called my best friend, Sarah. Her voice was sleepy when she answered. "Clara? It's 7 in the morning. Is everything okay?" she asked. I took a deep breath. "No, not really. Can I come over?" I said, my voice cracking despite my best efforts to stay composed. "Of course," she said, instantly awake and alert. "I'll put the coffee on." An hour later, I was sitting at her kitchen table, my hands wrapped around a warm mug, the steam rising to meet my face. I told her everything. I showed her the picture, the bank statements, the appraisal. I watched her face shift from concern to disbelief, and then to pure, unadulterated rage on my behalf. That absolute monster, she breathed, staring at the photo of Amelia wearing the necklace. How could he? Of all the things he could do, Clara, this is evil. I know, I whispered. That's why I can't just leave. I can't just let him walk away from this and pretend it never happened. You shouldn't, she said, her voice firm. You can't. So, what's the plan? I don't know yet, I admitted. My first thought was just to confront him when he gets home tonight. But I feel like that's what he'd expect. He'd just lie his way out of it. Sarah nodded, her eyes thoughtful. You're right. A private confrontation lets him control it. He'll manipulate you, make you feel like you're the one who's wrong for being upset. You need to do this on your terms, in a way he can't escape from. Her words resonated with me. On my terms, in a way he could not escape. That was exactly right. He had taken away my peace, my security, my mother's memory. I was going to take back the control. He needs to face real consequences, I said, more to myself than to her. He absolutely does, Sarah agreed. Legal consequences. The thought was terrifying, but it also felt right. This was not just a marital dispute. It was a crime. He had committed a crime against me. I left Sarah's house feeling stronger, more focused. I had a confidant, an ally. I was not alone in this. The path ahead was still murky, but for the first time, I felt like I was the one holding the map. Mark came home that evening around 8. He walked in, dropped his travel bag by the door, and gave me a perfunctory kiss on the cheek. It felt like being brushed by a cold stone. Hey, he said, already loosening his tie. Long trip. I'm exhausted. I forced myself to act normal. It was one of the hardest things I have ever had to do. My entire body was screaming with rage. I wanted to launch myself at him, to claw that smug, deceitful look off his face. But I just nodded. I bet, I said, my voice carefully neutral. How was the conference? Oh, you know, he said, waving a dismissive hand. Same old, same old. A lot of boring speeches. He was a terrible liar, but I had been too trusting to see it before. Now it was painfully obvious. His eyes did not quite meet mine. His movements were just a little too casual. Did you at least have a nice time at the awards gala last weekend? I asked, watching his face closely. For a split second, a flicker of panic crossed his features before he smoothed it over. The gala? Oh, right. It was fine. A bit stuffy, actually, he said, walking toward the kitchen to get a glass of water. Did you go with anyone from the office? I pressed, following him. He stopped, his back to me, and gripped the counter. Clara, can we not do this right now? I just walked in the door. I don't want to be interrogated about work. His defensiveness was all the confirmation I needed. I had him. He was hiding, and he was bad at it. I'm not interrogating you, Mark, I said, my voice still calm. I was just making conversation. I saw a picture online. It looked like a nice event. He turned around slowly, his eyes narrowed. What picture? He asked. Just a group photo someone from your office posted. I lied smoothly. You look like you were having a good time. I decided to hold back the fact that I had seen Amelia. It was too soon to play that card. I wanted to see how deep he would dig his own grave first. He seemed to relax a little, but he was still wary. It was fine. Now, I'm going to go take a shower. He brushed past me without another word. I stood in the kitchen, my heart hammering. The ease with which the lies fell from his lips was chilling. He felt no remorse, no guilt. He was only annoyed that I was asking questions. That night, I lay in bed next to him, a chasm of silence and secrets between us. He fell asleep within minutes, his breathing even and untroubled. I stayed awake, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. This was not just about getting my necklace back. This was about dismantling the life he had built on a foundation of lies. And I would do it piece by piece. The next day, I took the first concrete step. I called a lawyer. I found one who specialized in both family law and civil litigation. I explained the situation to a paralegal who scheduled a consultation for me that afternoon. Walking into that polished, quiet office felt surreal. I was a wife, a grieving daughter, not someone who consulted with lawyers about felony theft committed by her own husband. I sat across a large mahogany desk from a woman named Ms. Davis. She was sharp, professional, and listened to my story without a hint of judgment. I showed her the same evidence I had shown Sarah. The photo, the bank statements, the appraisal document. She examined the appraisal carefully. "This is very clear," she said, her tone serious. "The necklace is your personal property, inherited from your mother. It is not marital property. Taking it without your consent and giving it to a third party constitutes theft. Given the appraised value, it is indeed grand larceny, which is a felony." Hearing her confirm it so clinically sent a shiver down my spine. A felony. My husband was a felon. So, what are my options? Asked, my voice barely a whisper. "You have several," she explained. "You can confront him and demand the necklace back. You can file for divorce and address the theft as part of the asset division, though that can be messy. Or, you can file a police report and press criminal charges. The third option is the most aggressive, but it is also the most likely to result in immediate consequences for him and the return of your property." I thought about confronting him privately. He would just deny it, or worse, he would get to the necklace first and it would disappear forever. I thought about the divorce proceedings. It would be a long, drawn-out battle, his word against mine. "I want to press charges," I said, the words tasting like metal in my mouth. But they also tasted like justice. Ms. Davis nodded slowly. "That is a very serious step, Clara. It will irrevocably end your marriage and will have severe repercussions for your husband's personal and professional life. You need to be absolutely certain this is the path you want to take." "He stole my mother's memory and gave it to another woman," I said, my voice gaining strength. "He made that choice. I'm just choosing to hold him accountable for it." A small, approving smile touched her lips. "Very well. Here is what I recommend. First, we need to establish a clear timeline. We need to be strategic about when and how you file the report. The best-case scenario is to catch them with the evidence, so to speak. If you file the report while the other woman is in physical possession of the necklace, it makes the case much stronger." "How would I even know when that would be?" I asked. "You said she works with him," Ms. Davis mused. "People like to show off expensive gifts. There might be another work event, a party, a special occasion." Her words sparked an idea. Amelia. I needed to know more about her. I had her name. That was a start. When I got home, I spent hours online, piecing together her life from her public social media profiles. She was younger than me, ambitious, and seemed to love the spotlight. Her profile was filled with photos of her at fancy dinners, on lavish trips. And then I found it, a post from a few days ago, counting down the days to the best birthday ever. So excited for what my amazing man has planned. Her birthday. It was this coming Saturday. And Mark was the amazing man. I felt a fresh surge of anger. He was planning a birthday celebration for his mistress, while I was at home, grieving and trying to hold our broken marriage together. I had a strong feeling I knew what she would be wearing to her special dinner. I decided to test the waters with Mark's family. I needed to know who would be an ally and who would be an enabler. I started with his sister, Jessica. We had always had a decent relationship. She was more level-headed than the rest of her family. I called her under the guise of wanting to catch up. We made small talk for a few minutes before I steered the conversation where I wanted it to go. "So, I saw some pictures from Mark's big company gala," I said casually. "It looked very fancy." "Oh yeah, I heard it was a big deal this year," she said. "Mark seems to be doing really well at work." "He does," I agreed. "He's been working so hard." He mentioned a colleague, Amelia, I think. He said she's a real star on his team. I held my breath, waiting for her reaction. There was a slight pause on her end. "Amelia?" "Yeah, he's mentioned her a few times. Says she's a go-getter. To be honest, he mentions her a lot. Oh, really? I asked, keeping my tone light. Yeah, Jessica said, a note of hesitation in her voice. A little too much, if you ask me. I hope he's being careful. She seems like the ambitious type. It was not a full-throated warning, but it was enough. Jessica was suspicious. She would not be an obstacle. She might even be on my side when the truth came out. That was one small comfort. Next, I had to deal with the inevitable conversation with his mother, Diane. She called me the next day, her voice dripping with her usual passive aggression. Clara, dear, she began. I was just speaking with Mark. He seems so stressed lately. I do hope you're taking good care of him. A man in his position needs a supportive home environment. The lecture was so familiar I could have recited it by heart. For years, I had just swallowed it, trying to be the dutiful daughter-in-law. Not anymore. Mark's stress is his own to manage, Diane, I said, my voice colder than I intended. She was taken aback by my tone. Well, of course, dear. But a wife's role is to be a comfort. I just worry that with everything you've been through this past year, you haven't had the energy to really focus on his needs. The implication was clear. My grief was an inconvenience to her son's happiness. The injustice of it made me see red. My needs after my mother died were for my husband to be there for me, I said, my voice shaking slightly. But he was too busy, wasn't he? Now, Clara, that's not fair, she chided. He has a very demanding career. You can't expect him to put everything on hold. I had heard enough. I have to go, Diane, I said abruptly, and I hung up before she could reply. The conversation solidified my resolve. Diane would never see Mark's faults. She would blame me for everything. When this all came out, she would be my harshest critic. And I found that I did not care at all. Her opinion was worthless to me. I continued to build my case. I found more emails. I had guessed the password to his personal account years ago. It was the name of his childhood dog. He had never bothered to change it. The emails between him and Amelia were sickeningly sweet and utterly damning. They talked about their future together, about how he was planning to leave me. Once the time was right, they talked about the necklace. It looks so perfect on you, he had written to her the day after the gala. Like it was always meant to be yours. It's a family heirloom, and I want you to be the one who wears it. A family heirloom. He had stolen my family's heirloom, my mother's legacy, and presented it to her as his own. He was not just erasing me. He was erasing my entire lineage, my history. He was trying to graft her onto his life by using a piece of mine. The audacity, the sheer, calculated cruelty of it, took my breath away. I screenshotted the email and sent it to myself. It was the final piece of the puzzle. I now had proof of the affair, proof of the theft, and proof of his intent to deceive her about the necklace's origin. He had not just given her a stolen item, he had given it to her under false pretenses, weaving a lie that implicated her in his fantasy. Armed with this new evidence, I focused on the final phase of my plan, the confrontation. I knew Amelia's birthday was on Saturday. I just needed to know where he was taking her. Mark was being unusually secretive, but I had an idea. I checked the search history on our shared home computer. Tucked between searches for stock prices and sports scores was a search for best romantic restaurants in the city, and one name had been clicked on multiple times. La Velle. My blood ran cold. La Velle was a beautiful, ridiculously expensive French restaurant. It was where Mark had proposed to me 6 years ago. He had booked the same corner table by the window, the one with the best view of the city skyline. The cruelty was almost poetic in its perfection. He was not just replacing me. He was meticulously recreating our most cherished memories with her. He was trying to overwrite my existence. That was when I knew I had to do it there. In that restaurant. At that very table. I would not let him create a new happy memory on the ashes of ours. I would burn it all to the ground myself. I spent the next 2 days in a state of suspended animation. I went through the motions of my life, going to work, eating, sleeping. But my mind was entirely focused on Saturday night. I felt a strange sense of calm, the kind that comes when you have made a decision so absolute there is no turning back. I spoke with my lawyer, Ms. Davis. One more time to go over the plan. This is a high-risk, high-reward strategy, Clara, she warned me. A public confrontation can be unpredictable. You need to be prepared for him to lash out, to cause a scene. He's the one who's going to have a scene caused for him, I said. I'm just going to be the catalyst. She gave me specific instructions. I was to contact the local police precinct's non-emergency line beforehand and give them a heads up. I was not to accuse or engage in a fight. I was to state the facts calmly, show my proof, and let them handle it. The most important part was to have visual confirmation of the necklace before I made my move. If Amelia was not wearing it, the entire plan would fall apart. It was a gamble, but one I was willing to take. On Friday afternoon, I made the call. I spoke to a desk sergeant and explained the situation as calmly as I could. I'm reporting the theft of a valuable piece of jewelry, I said. I know who stole it, and I know who currently has it in their possession. I also know where they will be tomorrow night. I intend to be there, and I will call 911 to request an officer to retrieve my stolen property. The sergeant was surprisingly patient. He took down the details, my name, Mark's name, the restaurant's address. Ma'am, we can't dispatch an officer based on a potential future event. You'll need to call 911 when you are actually at the location and have eyes on the stolen item. I understand, I said. I just wanted there to be a record of my call beforehand, so you know this isn't a prank or a simple domestic dispute. This is a felony theft. He seemed to understand.
Okay, Mom.
We have your information. Call 911 when you're on site. That was all I could do. The stage was set. All the actors were in place. All I had to do was wait for the curtain to rise. On Saturday, I told Mark I was going out for dinner with Sarah. He barely looked up from his phone. Okay, have fun, he said, the words empty and automatic. He was already somewhere else, his mind on his evening with Amelia. He left around 7, dressed in his best suit, the one he wore to our wedding. He smelled of expensive cologne. He thought he was heading to a romantic celebration. He had no idea he was walking into the public dismantling of his entire life. I waited another hour, my heart a steady, heavy drum in my chest. I dressed carefully, not in anything flashy, but in a simple, elegant black dress. I wanted to look composed, in control. I drove to the restaurant, my hands gripping the steering wheel. I parked a block away and sat in my car for a few minutes, taking deep, steadying breaths. This was it. There was no going back. I walked into La Velle at 8:30. The hostess greeted me with a polite smile. Do you have a reservation? She asked. No, I said, my eyes scanning the dining room. I'm meeting someone. I think I see them. And there they were, at our table, the corner table by the window. Mark was sitting with his back to me, but I could see Amelia perfectly. She was wearing a stunning red dress, and she was laughing at something he had said. And there, shining under the soft lights of the restaurant, was my mother's necklace. It was so bright, so blue, it seemed to pulse with a life of its own. Seeing it on her, in that place, solidified every ounce of my resolve. All my fear, all my hesitation, vanished. I was filled with a cold, righteous certainty. I walked toward their table, my heels clicking softly on the marble floor. Every head I passed seemed to turn, but I did not notice. My entire world had narrowed to that table, to that man, to that stolen piece of my heart. Mark saw me first. His smile faltered, and his eyes widened in shock and confusion. Clara, he whispered, his voice barely audible. Amelia stopped laughing and followed his gaze. She looked at me, a flicker of annoyance in her eyes, which quickly turned to a smug sort of curiosity. She clearly had no idea who I was. She probably assumed I was a business acquaintance, an unwelcome interruption. I stopped at their table, standing over them. I did not raise my voice. I did not cause a scene. I spoke in a calm, level tone that carried in the quiet restaurant. Hello, Mark, I said. He was speechless, his face turning a pale, sickly white. He looked like a ghost had just walked into his birthday party. Amelia looked from him to me, a perfectly arched eyebrow raised. Mark, darling, she said, her voice smooth as silk. Aren't you going to introduce me to your friend? I decided to save him the trouble. I looked directly at her, my gaze unflinching. I'm not his friend, I said.
I'm Clara.
I'm his wife. The smugness vanished from her face, replaced by a wave of shock. Her mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. Her hand, instinctively, went to her throat, her fingers brushing against the sapphire. And I'm here, I continued, my eyes locking onto the necklace, to get my property back. Her eyes widened. What are you talking about? Mark gave this to me for my birthday,
He said.
He said it was a family heirloom. Oh, it is, I said, a bitter smile touching my lips. It's a family heirloom.
From my family.
It belonged to my mother, who passed away last year. He stole it from my jewelry box to give to you. Mark finally found his voice. It was a strangled, panicked sound. Clara, stop it. This is insane. You're making a scene. Let's go outside and talk about this. He started to get up from his chair. I don't think so, I said, pulling out my phone. I'm done talking to you, Mark. From now on, I'll be talking to the police. His face crumpled. The blood drained from it completely. You wouldn't, he breathed. I already have, I said, and I dialed 911. I kept my voice steady and clear as I spoke to the operator. Hello, I'd like to report a theft in progress. I am at La Velle Restaurant. I have located my stolen property, a valuable necklace. The man who stole it is here, and the woman he gave it to is wearing it right now. The entire restaurant had gone silent. Every diner, every waiter, was staring at our table. Mark looked around, his eyes wide with horror, as he realized he was trapped in a nightmare of his own making. Amelia looked like she was about to be sick. Her perfect birthday dinner had just turned into a crime scene. The police arrived in less than 5 minutes. 2 uniformed officers walked into the restaurant, their presence immediately commanding the room. One of them was a man in his 40s with a calm, no-nonsense expression. He approached our table. I'm Officer Miller, he said. We received a call about a stolen item. I nodded. That was me.
I'm Clara Evans.
This is my husband, Mark Evans. And this woman, I said, gesturing to Amelia, is wearing my stolen necklace. Officer Miller looked at Mark, then at Amelia, who looked as if she wanted the floor to swallow her whole. Sir, ma'am, can we step outside to discuss this? Officer Miller asked. I prefer to handle it right here, I said firmly. I don't want them to have any opportunity to get rid of the evidence. Mark exploded. Evidence? This is ridiculous. It's a misunderstanding. Clara, you're being hysterical. I'm not hysterical, Mark, I said, my voice dangerously quiet. I'm prepared. I opened my purse and took out a manila envelope. I handed it to Officer Miller. In here, you'll find a certified appraisal of the necklace, with a full description and its value. You will also find a photograph of the woman wearing it, taken last weekend. And you will find a printout of an email from my husband to her, in which he admits to giving her the necklace and calls it a family heirloom. Officer Miller took the envelope and began to examine its contents. The other officer stood by, watching Mark and Amelia closely. The silence in the restaurant was deafening. Officer Miller read through the documents, his expression unreadable. He looked up from the appraisal, his eyes going to the necklace around Amelia's neck, and then back to the detailed description. He then looked at Mark. Mr. Evans, he said, his voice level and professional. Your wife has provided compelling evidence that this necklace is her personal property. Did you take this item from her possession without her permission? Mark started to stammer. It's complicated. It was a gift. We're having marital problems. That's a matter for a different court, sir. Officer Miller said curtly. Right now, I'm concerned with a reported felony theft. Did you, or did you not take the necklace from her jewelry box? Mark was cornered. He looked from the officer to me, his face a mask of desperation and fury. This is a private matter, he hissed. It stopped being a private matter when you stole from me, I replied. Officer Miller turned his attention to Amelia. Ma'am, I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask you to remove the necklace. It is evidence in a criminal investigation. Amelia stared at him, her eyes wide with disbelief and humiliation. "You can't be serious," she whispered. "I am completely serious," the officer replied, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Please hand it over." Slowly, her hands trembling, Amelia reached behind her neck and unclasped the necklace. The beautiful sapphire teardrop, my mother's teardrop, lay in her palm for a moment before she extended her hand toward the officer. He took it carefully and placed it in a small evidence bag. The sight of it, finally safe, finally on its way back to me, made my knees feel weak with relief. Amelia looked at Mark, her face contorted with rage. "You told me it was yours to give. You told me it was a family heirloom," she spat at him. "It is," he insisted, his voice cracking. "It belongs to my family." I cut in, my voice clear and strong. Officer Miller turned back to Mark. "Mr. Evans, I need you to come with us down to the station to answer some questions." "You're arresting me?" Mark choked out, his eyes darting around the room at all the watching faces. He saw his colleagues from work at a nearby table, their expressions a mixture of shock and pity. He saw the restaurant manager hovering nervously. His entire world was collapsing in public. "We're detaining you for questioning regarding a grand larceny charge," Officer Miller corrected him. "Please stand up and put your hands behind your back." The moment the officer put his hand on Mark's arm, it was like all the fight went out of him. He just froze. The confident, charming man I had married was gone. In his place was a pale, terrified stranger, a common thief caught in the act. As they led him out of the restaurant, past the silent, staring diners, our eyes met one last time. There was no apology in his gaze, no remorse. There was only pure, unadulterated hatred. He hated me, not for what he had done, but for getting caught. I felt nothing, just a vast, empty sense of finality. It was over. The aftermath was swift and brutal. Mark was formally arrested and charged with grand larceny. The news spread through his company like wildfire. Being arrested in a fancy restaurant in front of half the city's business elite was not something that could be swept under the rug. He was suspended from his job immediately, pending an investigation. Amelia, in a desperate act of self-preservation, gave a statement to the police claiming she was a victim of his deception, that she had no idea the necklace was stolen. She quit her job the following Monday and scrubbed her social media of any trace of him. She disappeared from our lives as quickly as she had entered them.
The phone calls started the next day.
The first was from my mother-in-law, Diane. Her voice was practically vibrating with fury. "Clara, what have you done?" she shrieked into the phone. "How could you do this to your own husband? You had him arrested. You've ruined him." I listened to her tirade, my mind strangely calm. "Mark ruined himself, Diane," I said when she finally paused for breath. "He stole from me. He committed a crime." "Over a piece of jewelry," she screamed. "You've destroyed his life and his career over a silly necklace. You were always so selfish, so dramatic. I knew you would do something like this." "It wasn't just a necklace, and you know it," I said, my voice low and steady. "It was my mother's, and he gave it to his mistress. There is nothing you can say that will make me feel sorry for him. He got what he deserved." I hung up the phone before she could respond. I blocked her number. I was done with her poison. The next call was from Jessica, Mark's sister. Her tone was completely different. "Clara, I just heard what happened," she said, her voice full of genuine distress.
"I'm so sorry."
"I can't believe he would do something like that. Are you okay?" "I will be," I said, the unexpected kindness in her voice making my eyes well up. "Thank you for calling, Jessica."
"Of course," she said.
I had a feeling something was going on with that Amelia woman. I should have said something more to you. I'm sorry I didn't." "It's not your fault," I told her. "It's his. Only his. My mother is losing her mind," she sighed. "She's trying to rally the family against you, but don't worry.
Not everyone is buying it."
What Mark did was unforgivable. You did the right thing." Her validation was a bomb on a raw wound. It was a small thing, but it meant the world to know that not everyone in his family was blind to his faults. My friend Sarah came over that night with a bottle of expensive wine and 2 large pizzas. We sat on my living room floor, and for the first time in over a year, I felt a sense of lightness. "I still can't believe you actually went through with it," she said, shaking her head in awe as I recounted the scene at the restaurant. "You are my hero." I was terrified, I admitted. But when I saw her wearing it, all the fear just
Disappeared.
It was like I was watching a movie, and I knew how it had to end. "He deserved every single second of that humiliation," she said, raising her glass. "To new beginnings." "To new beginnings," I echoed, clinking my glass against hers. The legal proceedings were surprisingly straightforward. With a pending felony charge hanging over his head, Mark had absolutely no leverage in the divorce. My lawyer, Ms. Davis, was brilliant. She filed immediately, citing his infidelity and the criminal charges. He did not even try to fight it. He was too busy trying to find a criminal defense attorney he could afford. The divorce was finalized in a matter of months. I got the house, the majority of our savings, and my freedom. He was left with a mountain of legal bills and a tarnished reputation that would follow him forever. He ended up taking a plea deal to avoid a trial, pleading guilty to a lesser misdemeanor charge of theft. It meant he avoided jail time, but he now had a criminal record. His high-flying career in finance was over. No reputable firm would hire him. The last I heard, he had moved back in with his mother. A few weeks after his arrest, I got a call from the police department. The necklace was being released from evidence. I went down to the station to retrieve it. The officer handed me the small plastic bag. I took it out to my car and sat there for a long time, just looking at it. I opened the bag and took the necklace out. It felt cool and heavy in my hand. I thought I would feel sad when I held it again, that it would be tainted by what he had done. But it was not. Holding it felt like a victory. It was not just a piece of my mother anymore. It was a symbol of my own resilience, a reminder that I had been pushed to my breaking point and had not broken. I had fought back. I clasped it around my neck. The sapphire felt cool against my skin. It felt like it was finally home. I looked at my reflection in the rearview mirror. I saw the necklace, and I saw my own eyes, clearer and stronger than they had been in a very long time. I started the car and drove away, not looking back. I never saw Mark or Amelia again. I sometimes wonder if he ever truly understood the gravity of his betrayal, the depth of the wound he had inflicted. I doubt it. People like Mark only understand consequences that affect them directly. But as I remember his face in that restaurant, the utter shock and humiliation as his carefully constructed world shattered around him, I know one thing for sure. He finally learned what it feels like to have something precious taken from you, right in front of the whole world. He finally learned what it feels like to be powerless. And that, I realized, was a much more fitting punishment than any court could ever hand down. He had tried to erase my history, and in the end, he had only succeeded in erasing his own future. The necklace was no longer just a memory of my mother's love. It was now a testament to my own strength. He had inadvertently given me a new heirloom, one forged not of silver and sapphire, but of fire and survival. And it was a story I would carry with me always. I had taken the worst pain of my life and turned it into my power. The scales were finally balanced.